College Football Update with your host, Sean Spencer and Alex Loosemore.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How you doing? Happy Thanksgiving to all y'all in the States. Love you and thank you so much for being here with us. You know who it is. It's your boy, Sean Spencer, one half of that dynamic duo that's Let's Talk Football. And if we're talking college football, you know who I'm with. My guy from up north, Mr. Canada himself, Alex Loosemore. What up, Alex?
Not too much, man. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and hope that the majority of the people have a nice day off to kind of rest here, watch a little bit more football, NFL and college both today, and getting ready for a massive weekend of college football.
Absolutely. Rivalry week is upon us. Before we get into that, I got to shout out my guy who I know that's Minnesota, but it looks a little burgundy and gold. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that. My guy, co-host of Washington Football Weekly and South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer. What up, Will?
Hey, good morning, fellows. It's fun to be on here talking college football. I'm actually paying attention this time of year. There's been a couple weeks where I ignore it, but I'm all in on everything right now, and I'm excited. As you can see, we got a divided household. In-laws, my wife is from Madison, so my in-laws were longtime season ticket holders, so I got the Badgers hat on. My dad went to Minnesota, so I'm supporting that. I can't get the right side here. This is what I will be wearing, and at 12 o'clock, I just stay quiet and watch the game.
Yeah.
There you go.
House divided. I love it. Yo, welcome to College Football Update, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad you guys are here with us on this Black Friday. You know, hope you got some deals or things of that nature, or saved money, which we all need to do. But look, we're gonna get right into it. The CFP has been updated. We are on rivalry. Conference championships are not too far down the line. The bowl games, all that stuff is right around the corner. So look, let's get into it right now, because this has caused a lot of debate and stir. It's first in our group chat, but all over the country. Let's go ahead and look into it right now. Here is the current CFP picture with Oregon at the 1 seed, Texas at 2, Miami at 3, and Boise at 4. Then you have your 5-12, Ohio State, Arizona State, your 8-9, which is Georgia versus Tennessee. Give me 1 second. And your 6-11, Penn State, Indiana, and then your 7-10, Notre Dame versus SMU. Alex, I'm going to come to you first. When you look at those top four, Oregon, Texas, Miami, Boise State, what are your thoughts, man? Do you think that's where we're going to be come CFP time, or, you know?
I think 2 out of the 4 will be there. I don't think Texas is going to be there. I think Georgia has their number, so I think Georgia's going to win the SEC, and they'll probably take the 2 seed. And I'm not as confident in Miami as I used to be. So I think there's definitely a potential for them to lose today, or this weekend, against Syracuse. Kyle McCord and that offense, they can score at will, depending on the game. And then that would leave Clemson and SMU in that title game, and one of them getting the first round bye. And I honestly think Miami and SMU could take that game. So I'm not confident in Miami to hold that spot, but I think Oregon and Boise State are probably going to win their conferences. Although, again, I've been saying this a couple times here, if you're Oregon or Ohio State for that matter, why do you want to win the Big Ten? You bring up that bracket again. Their reward for winning the Big Ten and getting the 1 seed in this playoff would be playing the winner of Georgia and Tennessee. Versus if you're the 5 seed, you can host Arizona State in your own stadium and then go play Boise State on a neutral field.
Great point.
Which one's the easier path? Like, to me, it's clearly that 5 seed. So I think it's broken a little bit. I think realistically you should reseed after each round, and that way that 1 seed's actually worth a damn. But yeah, there's there's a few different things to look at with this playoff bracket.
Oh, absolutely. And Will, come to you. Like, honestly, when you look at these four, to Alex's point, I mean, this probably won't be the same when we actually start playing the games. But when you look at this four, we know the positives, we know the negatives. How confident are you in these four teams?
Could you bring them up again for me?
Yep.
Just like yeah, no, I mean, I think it makes sense based on how the season has gone right now. I mean, Oregon beat Ohio State, and so they have been the best team in the Big Ten. Texas right now is, for right now, the leader in the SEC with some of their wins here. So I think going into this rivalry weekend, everything is the top four make a lot of sense. It's the round before that where I don't think the matchups make a lot of sense. That's where I think they can have some fun with this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And look, I think the main thing is that this is up for debate, but it's also up for change, and we don't know what's going to happen. But let's go into those matchups you're talking about. Well, I'll come back to you. Ohio State, Arizona State in the 5-12 ball game. When you look at that one, we know how good Ohio State's been. Arizona State's been playing very well in a very hotly contested Big 12 conference. When you look at a game like this one, where you have one that's been perennial dominant team, Ohio State, we know how good they are with only the one loss. They just, like you mentioned last week, boat raced by the score Indiana. And then you have an Arizona State team that battle-tested, been playing above their weight essentially. When you look at this game, do you look at it as a good competition or as a blowout? I mean, what are your thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, you give a lot of credit to Arizona State and their head coach. He's probably in line to get a promotion somewhere. But no, I mean,
apparently.
Excuse me, say that again.
Apparently there's NFL teams that want them.
Oh, interesting. But no, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the playoff, because if that was a bowl game, that's a terrible bowl game, because Ohio State could not care less about that game. But now that it's a playoff game, they're going to be motivated to show, hey, listen, we can win and keep going. We didn't win our conference, but we have championship aspirations and we can go after it. So I would not love that game. Where I saw the things that need to be adjusted is I don't want to see a repeat of conference matchups. I don't want to see a repeat of a game that happened 3 weeks ago when Georgia and Tennessee already played. So and plus, it's even more exciting for people to go against conferences. That's what the beauty of March Madness is. They're very careful when they do their matchups, and they wait at the very least. It could be Sweet 16. But they will wait until the Elite Eight or Final Four before they are going to have two elites from a conference potentially meet. And I think the committee will. I think they'll do the same. I think there's enough data out there to see that's important, because there's some really fun matchups. Just take the teams that are in there right now. You could reseed a little bit, which is going to happen regardless because of conference championships, and you could have some really fun matchups.
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at this, to Will's point, Georgia, Tennessee, we've seen that before. You know what I mean? And then Indiana, Penn State, hey, that could be an interesting matchup. But to that
first
point,
one to win to get 10 points in that game.
So obviously but these are matchups, to your point, that are conference. Alex, I'm gonna come to you. Notre Dame, SMU. SMU has been the shocker. They come into the ACC, only one loss. They're in the ACC championship. They're in the driver's seat right now. And then you go to our buddy Eric Kelly's Notre Dame, who also has been playing well as of late. They kind of have this stigma that once it comes to that December, January, they kind of fall off. But what do you, when you think about this game? I mean, is this a hotly contested matchup? Like, what are you thinking about if this is the one that we get for the 7-10?
I think it's closer than some people expect. I like Notre Dame to take that game. Another very underrated aspect of this first round of the playoff is the higher seed hosts the game. Yes. So right now you'd have Penn State hosting a game. You'd have Notre Dame hosting a game. You'd have Ohio State hosting a game. Those are all cold weather spots. And you'd have a team from Texas going. You'd have a team from Arizona going. And then you have another cold weather team playing in Indiana going to Penn State. But if they seed it so these warmer weather teams are going to these colder weather teams, that puts a huge dynamic into this game, limits the passing game, really favors the running game, where it makes it really interesting to see how these games are going to play out.
Oh yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
That is what I was kind of thinking about with what makes it exciting. It's not just SEC versus Big Ten. It's going to the elements you're not used to. I jokingly said first team to score 10 points, but that could be the same in a playoff matchup too. Exactly what you're talking about. I mean, we saw what just happened last night. Now I turned the game off at halftime, but the Dolphins went up to Green Bay, and the same situation happens. And that is a completely different environment. Today's game in Madison, I think my wife was saying it's going to be 20 degrees maybe.
Jeez. Yeah.
No SEC school is used to playing in this. They don't want to get tackled in this. No quarterback wants to be out there. They're going to have the heaviest coat they can put on.
Yep.
That is, I joke about the low scores of the Big Ten, but when you get to November football, things change. The elements change the game, just like they do in the pros. The kickers have a whole lot more trouble kicking a 50-yard field goal. So it could make a lot of fun.
Hard, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing that I love about this is one of the things that we always complained about was around this time, you get to the end of the season, the conference championship, even in between the last game, the conference champion was a week or so, but then you had that gap from whenever the conference championship was, or even if they didn't get to the conference championship, all the way to the bowl, which was almost a month at times. You have injuries, things being able to heal up. Right now, these games start on the 20th, December 20th.
Yeah, you get 2 weeks from conference championship to the first round.
Right. So that's not as much time. You got these players that might not be able to heal up as well. Now we'll all have all these guys playing because it means something, and I love that. But let's stay right there. It definitely means something. We see what the picture says. Now, obviously, these next couple weeks are could totally throw a wrench in all these plans. Mm-hmm. What we have right here could be completely different from what we end up getting. But let's talk about the seeding. Let's talk about this because, to your point, Will, I don't want to see Georgia, Tennessee again. Indiana, Penn State, give me. I don't really care. Like
that one, I want to see because we haven't seen it yet this year,
right?
Personally, but
true. But at the same time, to that point of Big Ten, like it's okay. I get what I to Will's point. I want to see this conference, that conference. Oh, how good is the maybe the team that's the 3 over here? That's the 1 on this side. How is the team that has 3 losses over here that only has 1 over here? That's some of the things I want to see. So let's get into that. Let's get into the seeding and how exactly these teams are getting put into these places. Now, obviously, if you're outside of the SEC, there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, it's the SEC bias. You know what I mean? And this is, look at Alabama, look at this. Talk to me, Alex, about how maybe how losses have different weight. How this loss might not be looked at as much as this loss over here, or this 10-1 might not be looked at like this 9-3.
Yeah, so I think there's big wins and big losses, I think, kind of balance each other out. So when you're looking at these teams where, and it's hard because you look at, we'll use Alabama and Ole Miss as the example here, where you've got phenomenal wins. They've both beaten Georgia. But then you go and look at some of their losses where it's just like, if we're clearly at their peak, they're 2 of the 12 best teams in the whole country. But then they can go lose to teams that are barely scraping by to make a bowl game. So it's one of those things where I think you've got to look at both sides, the wins and the losses, because them both beating Georgia gives them the right to still be in the discussion. Me personally, I don't think either of them should be in because of the losses they've had to Oklahoma. Like Alabama putting 3 points up on Oklahoma is inexcusable to me. That to me was the death sentence out of the playoff. Because everyone's been able to score in Oklahoma this year at will. And you go in and put 3 points up, that's inexcusable. Ole Miss, that loss to Florida isn't as bad because Florida's been playing pretty damn well lately. They almost beat Georgia before Lagway went down there. And but their loss to Kentucky is the very bad one. But again, you look at their schedule. They beat Georgia. They beat you guys, and you guys are ranked in the top 15. So there's some of those that kind of push them, I think, ahead of Alabama if you're going to put one of the 3-loss SEC teams in. Now, I don't think it should be over one of the 1-loss Big Ten teams, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think with 1 or 2 games going the way the SEC would want them to go, I do think you could see either Ole Miss or South Carolina, for that matter, stealing that last spot. And the reason, I think, just going back to that seeding the way it is, I think the reason, just kind of tinfoil hat going on here, I think the reason they're doing that is because you've seen more and more over the year of the SEC and Big Ten talking about, well, what if we just kind of go off by ourselves and do our own little thing? Are they trying to eliminate an SEC and a Big Ten team early so that instead of having those 4 first-round matchups, having one Big Ten or SEC team each, they win, and your final 8 is flooded with Big Ten and SEC teams? Are they trying to kind of knock a couple of them out early so you've got a little bit more diversity in the second round of the playoff?
Yeah, and
going
that
deep
would probably,
on it.
I mean, yeah, but I mean that would also lead to more not predictable, but predictable competition. Where we all know the NCAA does not want another TCU. They don't want another Georgia boat race in TCU 65 or whatever to 7. They don't want to see that. And from my perspective, it's always who's playing hot at that particular time. And that's why I'm going to come to you, Will. Because we look at the Alabamas and the Ole Miss, and to Alex's point, yes, they have 8 wins, but those losses look rough. And then I look at a team like South Carolina, who nobody picked to be high. Nobody had them being, in their top 5 or whatever in the SEC. But you guys are playing as good as, I put you up against most any team as far as Beamer's got those guys believing. You guys play great special teams. Your defense is playing well, and your offense is definitely coming together. So when I look at that, I put them higher. What could we say about how the committee is respecting not just wins and losses, but how the team is playing right now?
Yeah, I think they put that very well in place as to, they put a Georgia team that's 9-2 above an SMU and an Indiana team. So clearly they are factoring in, who is playing better. Georgia's had some really tough losses, but they are getting it together a little bit right now. So they are factoring that, and it should be. They put some teams in here that are within striking distance. They've got Arizona State within striking distance of getting in as a conference champion. They've got Clemson, who has won a bunch in a row since losing to Louisville, who could get in. South Carolina, I will say this, pour a little bit of cold water on that. We were a miracle away from losing to Missouri. Let's not forget that. They really kind of struggled in that game.
You were one bad call away from beating LSU.
And then there's also that part as well. So, I think obviously in our private chat, I expressed some concerns about this. But if you look at the rankings going into rivalry weekend and then conference championship weekend, there's not much argument that can be made. If you're Ole Miss, if you're Alabama, and you have 3 losses right now sitting here on Black Friday, you can't be talking about how you should be in the top 10 just because of who you played. You haven't won all of them. There's opportunities for you to get in there, but there's no way you should be going in saying, hey, if we beat Auburn, we're playing in the playoff. Not yet. There needs to be some factors going in. So I think going into this, they have seeded them today very well. We'll kind of see what happens later on.
Right. And that's to that point. Chris, shout out to Vandy Chris in the comments, says Texas isn't beating Georgia. Therefore, Georgia, Tennessee will not happen in the first round. Right. And we've said this CFP is not, it could be completely different come the time when the games are actually played. Chris also said, let's go Gophers, beat those popcorn skunks. So, yo, shout it out. Chris said, no 3-loss team should be in over a 1-loss. No 3-loss team should be in over a 1-loss Big Ten team. That defeats the entire purpose of the playoffs. And Chris he's not concerned about teams getting boat race. He wants these kids that have only had the 1 loss to come in. But I think to your point that you were saying a little bit earlier, or just to the end of that about the Auburn, that's what really takes a Texas A&M out of major contention for me. I understand that if they win this, they got an opportunity to get to the SEC championship and all that stuff.
You got to win the conference to get in at this point.
Right. But they made Auburn look like a competent team. Auburn, who has been struggling all year, they made Peyton Thorne, the ex-Michigan State quarterback, look elite in this game. And you know what I mean? So that's where it's like, okay, I get it that, if by the fact that they win, if they potentially win the SEC championship, they can get in. But then it's like, do I really want to see? I mean, they got good defense, but I can't.
Conference champions gotta matter.
Yeah,
you get rewarded for winning your conference. Doesn't matter who it is.
And that's the crazy part. I'm gonna go to what you sent me, Alex, because you were talking about breaking these guys down, and I know you added more context to this. This is where you have it. The 3 teams you have: Indiana, Penn State, Notre Dame. Their strength of schedule, their record, the best win, all these type of things. Talk to me about this in comparison to some of the other teams that might be kind of dancing around getting on the list.
Yeah, so for me, the big one I want to look at there is strength of record. So how they view strength of record is if you put other teams into that schedule, how do they fare with that? Like, how close are they to that same record? So you look at the top 10 here, and it's all playoff teams. It's Oregon's number 1, Georgia number 2, Ohio State number 3, Penn State 4, Texas 5, Miami 6, Indiana 7, Tennessee 8, SMU 9, Notre Dame 10. That's the strength of record. Obviously, strength of schedule is different. Georgia's got number 1. And the numbers for those top 10 teams of strength of record, it's all over the place. There's some in the 70s, some in the 50s, some in the 30s, all over the place. But then you look at some of those where we just had the question up of should those 3-loss SEC teams get in over that 1-loss Big Ten team. Well, the strength of record shows Penn State and Indiana higher than both Alabama and Ole Miss. Them being 11th for Alabama, and Ole Miss is all the way down at 19th. And Will, your South Carolina Gamecocks are 14th and 15th strength of schedule. 15th in the CFP ranking. 12th in strength of schedule. So that's why I think they should get in over the other 2 3-loss SEC teams if things go your way. But I think if you're looking at that strength of record is the big one I'm looking at. Obviously, strength of schedule is very important as well. But I also think they kind of undervalue some teams and overvalue some on everyone's schedule. But for me, looking at that strength of record, that's the big reason why Indiana, potentially SMU, as long as they hold out and win out the rest of their games, I think they should absolutely be in.
See now, so go over Miami's and SMU strength of record. That kind of surprised me.
So I've just got their rankings here. I don't know why I don't know how they actually determine it.
Chris sent me a picture in on my messenger, and I just sent it to you guys in the group chat. Miami's they had a 10 power ranking with a 66th strength of schedule and a 14th strength of record. And who was the other team? SMU?
Yeah.
You said, Will? SMU's 11th power ranking, 68th strength of schedule with a 19th strength of record.
Come to me with this. This is my mic drop moment.
Go right there. Go ahead.
So
I'm waiting for you.
So I was this is where I think it's no, a 3-loss versus 1-loss, no. But I'm looking at this at Clemson's record right now. They're the 12th team. They're out of it right now. I mean, essentially, it's the top 11 teams get in because of the chance for a conference champion to leapfrog. So it's your top 11. And if Clemson were to win tomorrow, their only win against a ranked opponent would be a number 15 team going into the game, which obviously
into the game. That was going to be my question.
Yeah. So, would even fall back further. So to me, Clemson is not in the college football playoff possibilities because you've lost to Georgia and then you beat one team that was in the teens. Like that is not do not have strong enough wins when you're having to go up against. You're winning against App State, NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, Virginia. Like those are not, impressive wins. Looking at the Miami SMU game, in my opinion, the winner between that, the loser is out. That if you were to compare a 2-loss team versus a 3-loss team, that's where I think you start factoring.
But should we penalize the 2-loss team for playing that extra game? That's where.
But
that would change the quality of who they're going against. So I was looking up.
Let's add context. I'll tell you the SMU. The SMU has a 10 of the 11th. Their power ranking is 11. Strength of schedule is a 68, and their strength of record is 19. So to your point.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at SMU's schedule here, they have, so they beat Louisville, who is ranked. They beat Pittsburgh. So they have some wins against ranked opponents, which is kind of like when looking at them versus Clemson. It's like Clemson shouldn't even be considered in here. Like throw yourselves out of there. They lost to BYU, which might have been ranked at the time. Wasn't BYU ranked most of the season, and then they just kind of run it off?
Well, they're still ranked now, but yeah.
So Miami, I'm looking on ESPN, a single win versus a ranked opponent. And all year we've been talking about Cam Ward for the Heisman. We've been talking about Miami. The U is back. And then you're looking at this, and who have they beaten? I guess they're looking at here Louisville. So Louisville was 22nd when they played SMU. They were not ranked when by the time they played Miami. But so ESPN's schedule, like their schedule stuff isn't very good. They're not kind of showing. They're showing basically when the teams played them, who they're ranked. Yeah. But you're kind of looking at Miami as you haven't had to play a very difficult schedule. So I think that's when you're looking at if you ultimately have 2 losses, then we got to look at, well, who else could potentially leapfrog based on who did they beat versus who did they lose to.
See, and I agree with you there. I think if Miami's the one that loses, then I think there's that debate. Because if Cam Ward wasn't freaking Superman for 8 weeks this year, they've probably got 4, maybe 5 losses realistically. And to teams like Stanford and Cal and teams that are nowhere near the playoff discussion. So if Miami loses that game, I think there's that discussion there. But SMU, like you said, having those wins against at the time ranked teams, I don't think they should get penalized if they lose that extra game that some of those other teams aren't playing.
Yeah. Well, and to your point of you want to see the hot teams coming in, SMU is the much hotter team coming into these games. They're rolling right now. I mean, they are, like you said, Miami barely beat a couple teams where SMU, besides a game against Duke, which we can also understand that everyone has a tough game throughout the year. Everyone has a down game, but then they're coming in rolling Pittsburgh, rolling Boston College by 10, rolling Virginia. It's not too difficult.
Boston College has been a pretty good team this year, though.
They have at times up and down. Yeah. No, that's where I think it's like they set up the rankings correct right now, but they've allowed for some intrigue in the next 2 weeks to see where there can be some leapfrogs here.
Yeah, because we'll get one more like unofficial one, and then that Sunday on the December 7th or December 8th, after the conference championship games on the Saturday, we'll get the full playoff bowl schedule, all that. So,
yes, and ladies and gentlemen, we will be here to give you all that, all the arguing, all the SEC, Big Ten, and ACC love. Damn it, we're still a conference. All right, y'all better show us some love. Come on, baby. Yeah. Here it is. Like we said, this is it right now. Everything could change even after this very weekend with the amount of rivalry games and things going on. So definitely stay tuned, and we will continue to bring you the most up-to-date stuff when it comes to that. Yeah.
If you want to just bring up that bracket again, there's another thing I just realized. That bottom half of the bracket has such an easy path. You look at that top, Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, all would have to cannibalize each other to make the national championship. That bottom half, you got to be laughing. If you're one of those teams on that bottom half of the bracket, holy.
Oh yeah.
Well, so here's the other thing I was just kind of looking at here. Look at, Notre Dame. they played against ranked opponents, but I'm sorry, Army and Navy play a certain style where you would think a Big Ten SEC team.
If you can stop the run, you dominate them.
Exactly, like they're a ranked team, but that's what I was kind of proud of my asking if they're going to play the Merchant Marines this weekend to Eric. But when Notre Dame played Louisville was ranked 15th. But they beat Texas A&M. That was a pretty marquee game. But that's another thing. You look at some of these losses. If Southern Cal beats Notre Dame's
gone.
Then you got to kind of look at it and say, but see, Notre Dame's gone, but. It's the same argument, though. They played more ranked teams and won more games than Miami has, than SMU has. So it's where it's not a perfect apples to apples that they've got.
Right. And we got it, and everybody's gonna definitely talk about wins, and everybody's also gonna talk about those losses because even if Georgia loses to an Ole Miss or Georgia loses somewhere, and Alabama loses to an SEC, when you have a Notre Dame who loses to an NIU, and no disrespect, Tina and Nick, I know you guys love your Huskies, but they're not on the same level. And NIU shut Notre Dame down. You know what I mean? Notre Dame couldn't do much. Now Riley Leonard has issues passing anyway, but still, that is a very, very bad loss on their part. So to your point, it's kind of like, ooh, we don't want to see
the worst
that.
One of the playoff teams.
Right. So sorry, Eric, we tried. But at least we talked about you in the conversation, buddy. Look.
He's been saying the whole time they've got to win to get in, too. So.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Look, we got to go ahead and move on, ladies and gentlemen, because what also happens when you get to November, December, and even later, and for some teams a lot sooner, coaches. They get fired. They're on the hot seat. Yep. First and foremost, let me pay homage to my coach. Mack Brown, and it's funny, last week we were going to talk about it, Alex, but we started talking about other things, and I was going to ask the question, is Mack Brown on the hot seat? Well, ladies and gentlemen, apparently his seat is so hot that he's torched. He's out of here. Mack Brown, after struggling again this season, is unable to kind of resurrect that North Carolina team, although we are 6-5. There's been expectations that he brought when he came back from Texas, and he got recruits in here, he got coaches in here, got a lot more eyes on Chapel Hill in North Carolina. Obviously, you see Sam Howell, Drake May, both got significant playing time in the NFL. But when you have that type of talent, Omarion Hampton, who's going to be a high-rated running back in the NFL, when you have that type of talent, and you consistently, the limit that you're only getting is like 8 wins, and you're losing to the likes of a Virginia, NC State, Tech, who's gotten better but hasn't been that great. When you're losing to these teams perennially, even when you have great talent like a Drake May, it doesn't look good. And then Will, obviously, I'll always talk to you about your team. If you let JMU put 70 points on you, you gotta leave. You gotta be out. And not just that. JMU this year. Last year was Appalachian State, where we gave up 40 points in the fourth quarter. So these are very bad losses. And albeit we love Mack and we love everything he brings to the table, you just can't really justify those. So he is gone. There's a number of other coaches that are potentially on the hot seat. Sam Pittman of Arkansas, Gus Malzahn of UCF. Alex, what are some of the names you've been hearing, and is it warranted?
I've been hearing Neil Brown of West Virginia as a big one. Go to the group of 5. Been hearing a lot, just looking it up today, on Trent Dilfer at UAB, possibly being out the door. And that was an interesting one to begin with, because he was never a collegiate head coach and was a high school head coach. And if you remember, there was a thing the year before he got hired of him basically tossing one of his kids on the sideline and grabbing him by the jersey and kind of like just chucking him to the bench, which was not a good look. And then you go ahead and hire him. It hasn't really been working out there. You've got a couple obvious ones like Ryan Walters at Purdue. It's only year 2, but they've been struggling. They already fired the OC. Kenny Burns at Kent State. They went winless. kind of the writing on the wall there. And then I know that there's going to be one that gets brought up if somehow they lose tomorrow. I don't think it should happen, but Ryan Day.
Wow.
If they lose tomorrow, they're coming for his head.
Yeah, they should.
I disagree. I know the standard is beat Michigan, go play for national championships, but at the same time, he's a top 5 head coach.
Yes.
When you look at the entire aspect of what a head coach is, I hate saying nice things about them, especially a day before the game. But if they got rid of him, that is a massive mistake on their part. Unless Urban Meyer decides he wants to come back and coach.
Well,
go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, I was going to bring it to you, and I was going to say, when you're one of these schools and you have one job, and you have 2 jobs, win it all and Big Ten and all that good stuff, but you got one main job. And it's the same reason they take all the O's out of everything in Michigan. Michigan and Ohio State takes all the M's out. You got to beat the rival. You got to beat these guys. You know firsthand, Alex, Harbaugh was all but gone when he couldn't beat Michigan State and he couldn't beat Ohio State.
Yeah. He was just about out the door, and he renegotiated to take less money, and then they go on that 3-year stretch.
Yeah. So you got to win those games. And I know there are people, I know Chris is in the comments saying, look, what? You only lose one game a year. What? No, how could you be out? But it's just different in those areas. The general public might feel like, no, this is one of the great coaches. And you've talked to me about it many times, Alex. Who are you going to replace him with? He is one of the best coaches in the country. But in their minds, sometimes it's very small on certain things. It's like, you don't beat that team, bye-bye. That's how it is. Yeah. Will, what were you about to say?
Yeah, no, I think this would be the year that it would be justified to fire Ryan Day, because who is Michigan's quarterback?
Davis Warren.
If you can't beat Michigan with this Michigan team with that guy at quarterback, who was a walk-on and is showing like he was a walk-on who's developed, but his ceiling was always down here.
Yeah,
where like that would make sense for me to the administration to finally say, you can't win the game, you have to win. We need to find someone else who can, because we are enough of an institution where we can get in the players that are going to keep us within the top 10, pretty consistently. But I'm with you where Ryan Day is a very good coach. And I've made that argument before where it's like, well, he's getting you there. He's getting you to the top 5 every single year, but this would be this would make sense, for me. But, it'd kind of be like, well, who are you going to find to replace him? It's kind of like, I thought Alabama did a really good job of grabbing the guy from Washington, but that's hard to replace someone at a Day level, at a Saban level. That's impossible to replace.
Yeah.
But, you kind of look around and say, well, who else could you bring in that might be able to get you over that hump like that? Some of the other names you mentioned, West Virginia, going to school in West Virginia at Shepherd. A lot of Mountaineer fans, though, just kind of looking at Neil Brown. I mean, he's been on the hot seat for a couple of years.
Right.
But you're looking at who he's beaten, and he hasn't beaten anybody. And when they go play someone difficult this year, they've lost every single difficult game they've had against Penn State, Ohio, Iowa State, Kansas State. They're all losing them, and they're not even close in some of these. So it is probably a time for them to reset. And same thing with Arkansas. Sam Pittman was fired. I think he was fired before week 1. Basically, he kind of knew that he was going to be out. I think at one point they had an idea who they wanted to replace him with. I can't remember who it is, but what was he? The offensive line coach at Georgia. It's kind of the whole hire itself. Once he lost KJ Jefferson, all that goodness just kind of left that program.
Now, to be fair, I think they've looked better than expected this year. I don't think many people expected them to go beat some of the teams they've beaten, but at the same time, I agree. I think he was a dead man walking coming into the year.
Yeah. Well, and I just forgot this, and I didn't want to talk too long, but Sean, to your Tar Heels, losing to James Madison, we are the Dukes of JMU. That is inexcusable. That is. But I think there has to be an understanding of all the talent that went to the NFL. North Carolina is not the program to quickly replace them. And I know we're going to talk about another head coach who's on the hot seat, and it's the same situation they're going through right now. When you lose a De'Ami Brown and you lose a Josh Downs and you lose a Drake May and who's the guy? Sam Howell and De'Ami Brown. These are NFL talents that you don't just have the next guy ready to take over. North Carolina and Mack Brown did a wonderful job of going from Sam Howell to Drake May. That's incredible. And they got so lucky that two guys out of Charlotte were elite quarterbacks that wanted to go there. But that's where sort of sometimes I'm like, the expectations need to be realistic. And it isn't going to be a certain program like that is not going to be able to lose that elite talent and just stay on top. There's going to be drops for him to rebuild. So that's where I was kind of like, I mean, I get it, but it's like you got to also know what you're going, the peaks and valleys of your program.
Right. And when you start winning and when you start bringing in this talent, then the expectations rise because to your point, we are an 8-win team. We are that kind of, we've been known as a basketball school, except for these last couple of years. And you talk about the quarterbacks, you talk about the wide receivers. Let's look at the running backs. Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, both those guys got drafted. Even Ty Chandler, who transferred in for 1 year, got drafted and is playing some meaningful minutes, and then now you
get drafted pretty high.
Right. Amarion Hampton's going to get a lot of love. So we see the influx of talent. I think we have a top 10 DN and Ruckus or Runyon. Name escapes me right now. Rucker, yeah. The fact that we are bringing in this talent is great. My little thing, and this is where, there might be a little inside stuff going on. We got to remember, Mack Brown started with North Carolina, abruptly left to Texas, wins the national championship, and then comes back. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, now you're back. Now we're going to handle this our way. Because it's like, dude, we're 6-5. If we were 3 and whatever, or, we're at bowl eligible. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, wait, you can't just let this man play to the end. He's going to go to a daggone bowl game, man. What are y'all? Yeah. But that's besides the point. I'm here in North Carolina, so I need to speak softly because I want to make it back to Virginia. But yeah, no, and it's funny. I shared something on my Facebook. Our parents are talking about it, that, it's all over the news here that they let him go and then they fired him, all that stuff. But Will, I'm going to come back to you. We see some of the guys that have left. I'm going to throw a couple names out there that maybe have earned themselves another year, but I don't know if that makes their seat any less hot. And you're in the SEC, Billy Napier. I know he got the extension, but he's making things look better, but there's still some question. Lincoln Riley out in USC. I mean, he's not been able to emulate the talent that he's had over the years. And then we talk about Oklahoma, Brent Venables. They have not been able to truly, outside of the Alabama game, they have not looked great in the SEC. Are these more big name coaches? Are these guys, still on a warm seat in their respective locations?
Oh, yeah. I think they're going into next year saying, I have to figure this out. Napier has, he's kind of been saved by Lagway coming in and maybe even some of the guys that weren't buying in, if he's sort of replaced them a little bit, was that dude who, after one of their losses, man, forget this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And I think, that Napier basically said, I'm going to focus on the guys that want to be here. And he is improving, but regardless, the resources at Florida you must be better than what he's been doing. Same thing with Lincoln Riley. They're paying him a boatload of money to win games. And besides bringing your quarterback from Oklahoma, what have you produced at Southern Cal, since then? And Venables, I thought it was a great hire. He deserved to be a head coach. He was the reason, him and Tony Elliott were the big time reasons why Clemson was so good. He even more so than I think Tony Elliott a little bit, how good he was with that defense. And it's been kind of surprising how difficult it's been. So I think, all 3 of those guys are going into next season knowing I got to get it right. I have to get it right this year. Kind of like the Sam Pittmans of the world.
Right. And look, Alex, before you say this, I was going to bring the same question to you. And the guy that we've talked about a lot, James Franklin at Penn State. Same boat. Can't get over the hump.
That's another one where it's just like, is there somebody that can do a better job there? Where you look great against everyone not named Michigan and Ohio State year after year.
Yeah.
And even this year, they've struggled some of those games. Minnesota almost beat them last week, for that matter. USC almost beat them. And those are teams that not many people are considering any good. Now, Minnesota also should have beat us. So that's another one there. But
should have beat us too. So.
Yeah, that's 3 more wins they should have had, maybe. But I think it's time for James Franklin to be on the hot seat. And another one in the SEC that I think saved his job for this year, but goes right back on the hot seat next year is Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I think he was out the door had they lost last week and this next game, but I think he's bought himself another year.
Auburn would be lucky to get rid of Hugh Freeze in my. That's why I was laughing at it. Just like, that's your head coach. Have fun with that, Auburn.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yo, Chris is saying James Franklin going nowhere. Stop that mess. He ties the school by far beyond wins and losses in 2 games. He also said Lincoln Riley to Ohio State.
Does he have the defense enough though to go to the Big Ten? Does Lincoln Riley have that?
I mean, we saw it this year. No, he doesn't.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, consistently, he's a Big 12 type coach.
But if he was able to keep, say, Jim Knowles on the coaching staff, get a really, really good defensive coordinator, I think you can make that work. That would be an interesting one. Lincoln Riley,
that's the big name that you would fire a Ryan Day for, would be someone like Lincoln Riley. I think.
Or would they build in house? Would they go off one of the guys they currently have, kind of like what we did? A guy that I think they could potentially go to that's been getting some looks elsewhere at some smaller schools, obviously, but Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach.
Oh, yeah.
He's great recruiter, as you can see with the wide receivers they've gotten through Columbus there. But that's a guy that I think if you were going to get rid of Ryan Day, I think that's that sneaky in-house hire.
Interesting. Well, and to Chris's point, but this is the problem for Penn State. James Franklin can get you to 9 wins every single year, and that's something. Right. He can get you to a top 10 program, but like what Alex was saying, every time Penn State has to play Michigan, you can white out all you want. When they have to go play Ohio State, and now the Big Ten only got more difficult, he doesn't win it, And so, but again, that's kind of where I go to the whole, well, what is your program's actual ceiling? Is getting to 9 and 10 wins and being a top 10 program. That's the best I can remember Penn State since the early 90s, They
made the playoff in one of the years with Barkley, if I'm not mistaken, 2016 or 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they made the playoffs once, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
I think they got boat race. I think it was the same one that Washington was in with Jake Browning, and it was an early playoff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's recruiting in that upper tier better than almost any coach year after year after year. So you're getting the top guys in, and you can't get over the hump versus a Michigan that up until this year never really got 5 stars. And we just develop and turn these guys into great players. So I think there's something to be said for James Franklin going on the hot seat. Should he be fired? Probably not.
Right.
But I think there's got to be some pressure on him.
Absolutely. Now, there's one other name I want to add, just as there's been talk about it, and I know you've been hearing it, Alex. Your coach, Jerome Moore. I know this is his first year. He's got to get his recruits. He's got to get all that. But when you come from a national championship to kind of what we've seen this year, people get used to winning, and then they start talking crazy, man. Have you heard any of that conversation, or is that even a possibility?
I've heard it. No, it's not a possibility. We lost 18 starters. You get 22 starters on offense and defense. 18 of those walked out the door. I think 17 of them are playing in the NFL. 1 retired after getting drafted as well. But and then you lost your head coach, your defensive coordinator, your strength and conditioning coach, your linebackers coach, your DBs coach. Like, you lost half a dozen coaches as well as your 18 out of 22 starters.
Yeah.
Seeing what was on the roster, even I had high expectations for this year. We shouldn't have. It was foolish to have those high of expectations, but you just went and got the number one recruit in the country, and you're flipping guys at an unreal rate right now. You're going to have potentially a top 5 recruiting class. Give him the time with those new recruits. The one coach I would say, though, if you're going to put somebody on the hot seat at Michigan, it's Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator.
Sure.
You had potentially 3 top 15 picks on that defense, and a ton of guys on that defense that played quality reps for that national championship team last year. And then a guy, Jayshawn Barham, who played plenty at Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
There was no excuse for the defense to be that bad. It's the same scheme. Didn't make adjustments until the last 3 games. They've allowed maybe 600-700 yards of total offense. So the defense has gotten much better, and the points have been way down. It might not even be 600 yards of total offense allowed. So if you're going to look at somebody at Michigan, it would be there. But Kirk Campbell, the OC, and Sherrone Moore by getting Underwood. And Sherrone Moore has done an incredible job recruiting offensive line. We're about to have 2 top 10 offensive tackles and a couple 4- and 5-star interior offensive linemen. They've bought themselves another year, if not more.
Should be more. Yeah, should be if you give him a chance.
The only reason I say at least 1 year is if you bring all that in and then you crap the bed, then I think they're probably sending you out the door.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And as NCAA 25 has taught me anything, is recruiting is not easy. All right. Nope. So if it's not easy in a video game, it's not easy in real life. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we got to move on. We appreciate you guys being here with us, and we're not going to be here that much longer, but it is rivalry week. Over the course of the next couple of days, there are a number of rivalries. Will alluded to Wisconsin versus Minnesota going on right now. Memphis Tulane played last night. My guy over here, he's got that big the game, Michigan, Ohio State. We talked about it. We got the big name matchup. And those of us here, we don't like any wolves, no wolf pack, because we Tar Heels around here, baby. Let's go. But that sparked the rivalry when we had Drake May those last couple of years, we lost 2 games. In games that we were favored in, we lost those games. So it definitely means something. I'll come to you first. What are some of the rivalries? I know the Palmetto Bowl, Clemson, South Carolina. I know that's hitting heavy in your household. What are some of the rivalries along with that one that you're watching this weekend?
I always watch Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I mean, Mississippi State's awful, but that's just always a fun one.
Egg Bowl,
You know, the Egg Bowl, just like watching the Iron Bowl is always worth it just to see, because you never really know. You know, and that's what just kind of right. You know, and even there's been times that Georgia Tech has for at least a half has given Georgia a game, and they'll be playing tonight. I think just kind of looking at what I love first and foremost is they've spread this out over 2 days. How smart is college football to finally say we can get eyeballs on more of these games by spreading them out instead of having multiple games happening at the same time, and you just you don't have the ability. You have to be at a bar to watch all of them. So that is what I think is going to be fun, and there's going to be some potential it could have some big time ramifications. Texas versus Texas A&M. Well, I don't think that's going to be that close, but it makes sense for game day.
For A&M.
What's that?
It's a brutal matchup for A&M.
Yeah, exactly.
Texas dog walks them.
Yeah, same here. And so, but it's like it does make sense to why game day would say that's where we want to be. The game every year is worth tuning into to see. So it is going to be a lot of fun. And down here, I'm already saying 4-letter words towards anyone that I know that wears the Clemson stuff. I keep myself quiet all year long, and then for like 1 week, I just
here we go. Right.
Yeah.
Yo, shout out to Vandy Chris. He said, in all caps, South Carolina is beating the hell out of Clemson. I've been saying that for 6 weeks.
I think so too. I think South Carolina is going to take Clemson tomorrow. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
I've got some quiet confidence behind it, just kind of based on who they played. I still think Clemson has a better roster, but I think South Carolina is playing a lot better, and the players that have to play are making very much a meaningful impact.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I'll come to you, Alex. Chris is also in the comments. We know Chris. We call him Vandy Chris. He's a diehard Vanderbilt fan. Shout out to him because I love everything about that. And he's been saying this since midseason. He's got Vandy upsetting Tennessee, as we saw Tennessee right now is in the CFP. Then they'll be out. I mean, you look at that game, and that's very believable. I can see Vandy coming in there and pulling off that upset, man. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. And all week I've been saying in the group chat as far as Tennessee goes, and it's the same argument I made for Alabama, Ole Miss, those kind of teams is what version of you are we getting week to week? Right. When Tennessee and Nico Yamaliava and that offense are up at their peak, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country. But you see some of these weeks where they just look terrible. And realistically, they looked bad against Alabama. They were just lucky that Alabama looked bad against them too. That was a game of two teams playing really rough. I think Vanderbilt can absolutely do this. Would I put money on it? No, not a chance. Rivalry week is one I stay away from betting because it's all over the place. But with Diego Pavia and Clark Lee and what Vanderbilt's done this year, absolutely. I wouldn't say there's any game where I'm like, yeah, no, they can't win that one. The way they played this year, they got a shot in every game.
I am cheering with Vandy Chris that it happens because of all the.
Let's go.
I would much rather see Alabama in the football playoff than Tennessee. Like, look at the same argument that I made is also looking at who have they beaten too, and looking at their stuff. It's like it's not impressive. Like all year, I've been like Tennessee, So no, let's let Vandy win and let's knock them out of there.
Yeah, I want chaos. As many of these teams to lose as possible. Let's blow it up.
Absolutely.
Get a whole new one next week.
Yeah. Hey, look, there's so much in there. Arizona State playing Arizona. There's so much on the line for Arizona State.
That'll be 12 essentially.
Exactly. You have all these games. Even Oregon Washington is not an easy one. Although the skill level and everything.
Oregon's number for years.
Exactly. So this could be wide open. Kansas State, Iowa State means something. BYU, Houston. All of these games mean something. So let's go ahead and do this. It's Black Friday. Let's give people what they want. Let's go for some upset picks. And I'm going to start. And I'm going to say this. Syracuse gets the W. Syracuse is taking. Kyle McCord has been doing it. I'm sorry if that's your thing. Syracuse is getting the W. And my other one is a shout out to Vandy Chris on this one. Peyton Thorne, baby. Peyton Thorne is going to come away with it. Alabama is. I think they lost it mentally. Auburn getting the upset. It's going to happen. They're going to be pissed off from last year when the fourth and whatever. Auburn comes to play today. Peyton Thorne all day, man. Alex, what you got, man?
I love that Vanderbilt one. I think the Syracuse one could absolutely happen. I would not have picked Memphis over Tulane, I can tell you that much. Based on the betting odds, I am taking South Carolina over Clemson. And you know what? As much as we've said, we talked down on them when we were talking Miami, Cal has played teams tough this year. Potentially look at that one. I don't know if they'll beat SMU, but look at that one coming down to the wire.
Ooh, yeah.
Potentially.
Very good defense. Very good defense. All right, Will, what you got, man?
Yeah, so I'll kind of repeat just a few here, but South Carolina over Clemson since it's a three ranking difference right here. And then because I want to see the chaos, and if Eric's that worried about them, I think it kind of shows that Notre Dame's a little worried about this game here. I'm going to go Southern Cal. We've been ripping on Lincoln Riley to come in here and say, hey, y'all, I'm going to get going for next season. We're going to start off by beating Notre Dame.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. The
offense looks better since they benched Miller Moss, too.
Yeah. Shows what we know. We were claiming Maryland Moss was going to be the next guy. And just didn't play out.
I'm going to say we've seen two different versions of Miller Moss. So
Very true. Very true. Very true. Oh, wait. What was that? What are you calling? I'm calling it now, Georgia fans. There's a new team in Georgia.
Wow.
And they're in the ACC. Georgia Tech comes in with the upset. Janae, I need a little help on this one. Can you help me out?
That make me crazy.
Let's go.
The answer is yes, but no.
We'll see, but that's the fun of rivalry week. Everything's up in the air. You throw the records out the windows. These guys are coming to play, and I am here for all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, oh my goodness, it is not every day where I get to hang out with these two guys, unless you're in our group chat, and then it's constant messages over and over. Oh man,
at work or whatever. It's man, what did I miss? Like it's just
right. My favorite part is when you guys were going back and forth in the chat, and all of a sudden Eric comes in. He's like, "Oh man, I wish I wasn't working today. And I got to go back up here." Yo, so shout out to my guys, Alex Loosemore, Will Kramer. Appreciate you guys being here with us. College football, it's winding down, but it's also heating up at the same time, and I'm here for all of it. What's up, buddy?
One more thing to just throw in is look at what this 12-team playoff has done for college football as a whole. Look at how many meaningful games are going on this weekend versus the last few years where it was just Michigan, Ohio State. Can Georgia take care of business? Can Alabama take care of business? There were only like 4 or 5 games that, as far as the playoffs were concerned, were really worth watching. Now you've got probably 15 to 20 games that are legitimate playoff contending teams in there. Like, this is massive for college football.
Yeah, I didn't think I would care who was the 10th and 11th seed, and here I'm yelling at you guys.
We've been arguing all week about it.
I love it. I love it, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to let you go. Check out me and my guy, Will Kramer, Washington Football Weekly. We got to get the win this weekend.
Need a win tomorrow.
We got to get the win this weekend. It's going to be rough. We can't all be like my guy here in Detroit, who's doing big things. But I know you were sweating yesterday.
So, lost another linebacker. Malcolm Rodriguez tore his ACL yesterday. He's done for the year. And on the college front, 2026 quarterback recruit Brady Hart decommitted. He is going to, where was it again? Texas A&M, reclassifying in the next year's class. So Bryce Underwood has cost us a quarterback recruit in 25 and 26 and possibly our one for 24. But I'll take Bryce.
And Carter Smith, he needed a place to go when with that, because he had committed to Michigan, right?
Yeah, he's the 2025 one that we lost. He went to, and that was before we even signed Bryce. We started talking to Bryce, and he's just like, "I'm out."
Yeah, I know what's happening here.
Went to Wisconsin. Wow. That's massive for them.
It is.
Ooh. Oh,
he's a very good quarterback.
Is he ready to play, or is he needs to be developed?
It's a good question. I don't know if for that scheme if he's ready to step in right away, but he's got all the talent in the world. It's just whether he can get it between the ears right off the bat or not, whether he can pick up the offense or not. But
they need
he can play.
Yeah, and you bring that back. Bring back that passing game. But look, we're heading out, man. You guys have a great Black Friday, great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. Hope you guys take care and watch all of this college football because, ladies and gentlemen, it's a beautiful thing. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Peace, people.
College Football Update. It's with your host, Sean Spencer. Hey.